Buddy Ebsen, the name alone brings back images of Southern charm, calm wisdom, and that iconic slow drawl from the Beverly Hillbillies. For millions, he was Jed Clampett, lovable, humble, and downright wholesome. He played America's favorite backwoods millionaire with a twinkle in his eye, never raising his voice or showing even a hint of malice. To the outside world, he was television royalty. But behind that television smile, a storm was brewing. A storm most fans never even noticed. You. See, Hollywood is great at hiding secrets. Behind every smile is a strategy. Behind every on-screen hug, a contract negotiation. And sometimes, behind every successful show, a feud is quietly burning, simmering just beneath the surface. That's exactly what was happening behind the scenes of the Beverly Hillbillies. A feud that didn't just last the length of the series, it festered for decades. While fans adored the comic chemistry between Buddy Ebsen and the Spitfire character of Granny, few knew that the woman who played her, Irene Ryan, absolutely could not stand him. And the feeling, while never publicly admitted, may have been mutual. Over the years, whispers leaked out. Tension on set, silent treatment, cold shoulders, and something deeper, resentment. Not just over personalities, but over control, over money, over stolen credit. What started as simple creative differences soon exploded into a cold war of egos that would last until Irene Ryan's final breath. Now, after years of speculation, private letters, cast interviews, and never-aired comments are finally coming to light. And with them, we begin to understand the full weight of Irene's fury and the painful silence Buddy Ebsen maintained until the end. This isn't just a story about two actors. This is about what happens when one voice is heard and the other is quietly buried. Let's uncover the truth. But before we dive into how things started unraveling, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you're into deep dives like this. We break down the biggest stories in entertainment without the fluff. Just facts, receipts, and a bit of chaos. And trust me, you're gonna want to see how this one ends. Long before he struck oil in the hills of Beverly, Buddy Ebsen was already carving out his place in Hollywood. He was a song and dance man, tall, lanky, and smooth-footed. He worked with Shirley Temple, almost played the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz, but had to quit after a near-fatal allergic reaction to the aluminum makeup. Still, his charm carried him through the decades. By the time the Beverly Hillbillies came around, he was the seasoned veteran ready for a career-defining role. Audiences fell in love with him instantly. But that's the thing about charm. It can be deceiving. Behind the scenes, multiple insiders described Buddy Ebsen not as the warm-hearted leader we saw on screen, but as a man used to getting his way. One director reportedly said Buddy had a firm grip on how the show should run and wasn't fond of pushback. Another crew member noted that while Buddy wasn't outwardly aggressive, he had a way of making sure things went his way, whether you realized it or not. And not everyone on set appreciated that. Irene Ryan wasn't a pushover. Long before she put on Granny's spectacles, she had built a solid reputation in vaudeville, radio, and film. She was quick-witted, sharp-tongued, and serious about her craft. So when she signed on to play the feisty matriarch of the Clampett clan, she knew exactly what she wanted from the role, and she wasn't about to let anyone overshadow her. Granny became an instant fan favorite. Her fiery personality, no nonsense. Attitude and hilarious rants often stole the show, and that didn't sit well with everyone, especially Buddy. Sources close to the show claimed that Ryan and Ebsen clashed early and often. One crew member said they had two different energies. Buddy wanted control, Irene wanted respect. That combination doesn't work on a set with egos. Rumors suggest Irene once told a producer that Buddy wasn't playing Jed Clampett. He was playing director, editor, and God. And she didn't find it amusing. By the third season of the Beverly Hillbillies, the cracks in the show's perfect front were no longer hairline fractures. They were fault lines. The tension between Irene Ryan and Buddy Ebsen wasn't just a whispered rumor among crew members anymore. It had become a noticeable, chilling presence that could shift the energy of an entire day on set. Multiple crew members later admitted that when Irene and Buddy were scheduled to film scenes together, there was a noticeable stiffness in the air. Stagehands moved a little quieter. Directors became a little more cautious. One anonymous camera operator once said, "You could tell when something was off. They'd be smiling for the cameras, delivering jokes, nailing the timing. But the moment cut was called, they'd turn away like strangers at a funeral." The core issue? Power. Not fame, not ego, not at first. It was power. Who had it, who used it, and who felt robbed of it? Buddy Ebsen had the advantage. He had more years in the business, more industry connections, and crucially, more influence with producers. It's reported that Ebsen had what insiders referred to as creative sway, an unspoken ability to offer suggestions to writers and directors that often turned into silent directives. If he didn't like how a scene was structured, changes would be made. If he felt a joke landed better when Jed delivered it rather than Granny, rewrites would quietly follow. For Irene Ryan, that was nothing short of betrayal. She was fiercely proud of her work. She saw Granny not just as comic relief, but as a carefully constructed persona, bold, protective, hilariously paranoid, and essential to the show's dynamic. The character wasn't just a part of the Clampett family, she was the fire, the force, the glue. So when her monologues began shrinking, or when her punchlines started being handed to Jed, she noticed. Oh, she noticed. According to production, assistants who worked the floor, Irene would often review scripts late into the night. She was known for jotting down handwritten notes, underlining lines, circling moments she felt were altered to dull Granny's voice. And more than once, she marched right into the writer's office to fight for her lines back. She came in like a storm, one former writer remembered. Not yelling, but dead serious. She'd point to her lines and say, "This isn't Granny, this is filler. Don't you dare turn her into wallpaper." And the writers, they were stuck. They knew what was happening, but they also knew who held the unofficial veto power. One of them later admitted, "We respected Irene, but we feared Buddy." It wasn't just about lines either. Irene's frustrations were compounded by how decisions were made behind the scenes. Buddy was often included in meetings with producers, offered input on set design, blocking, and sometimes even the direction of entire episodes. Irene, on the other hand, found out about changes secondhand. It was a lopsided system, and it cut deep. At one point during season 4, a scene meant to feature Granny's showdown with the city inspector, a comedic centerpiece for the episode, was trimmed by nearly half the dialogue. A sharp, fast-paced verbal exchange turned into a 2-line confrontation, with the punchline moved to Jed's character. Irene, furious, reportedly stormed off the set, locking herself in her trailer. According to one staffer, she stayed there for over 2 hours, refusing to return until the producers came to speak with her directly. When they finally did, all she said was, "If I'm not allowed to do my job, why am I here?" She wasn't just angry, she was humiliated. She knew the fans loved her character, but every time she stood her ground, it felt like another silent punishment followed. And then came the rehearsals, where tensions often cracked into view. During one particular table read, a heated exchange between Buddy and Irene nearly turned into a shouting match. Sources say the issue began over who should deliver the last line of a scene. Irene believed the comedic rhythm clearly called for Granny's exasperated zinger, while Buddy felt Jed's calm final word grounded the comedy better. Irene snapped, slamming her script down and allegedly saying, "If you want to play every part in the show, just say it." Buddy, stunned, didn't respond, but the rest of the table sat in silence. That rehearsal was cut short. The next day, the writers returned with a revised version. Jed got the final line. For the remainder of the show's production, Irene would rehearse only what was required. No small talk, no improvisation, no warmth. Her smile was reserved for the audience, never the man across the table. And there was another layer. Resentment fueled not only by creative control, but by how people were treated. Buddy, as the unofficial patriarch of the cast, was courted, consulted, praised. Irene? She was, as one PA recalled, kept at arm's length. She was a woman in her 60s, in a male-dominated studio fighting to be heard. And it was exhausting. She started keeping more to herself, eating lunch alone, rarely engaging with the press. She didn't want to be part of the machine anymore, a friend later said. She just wanted to be respected. But respect was hard to come by when the machine only listened to one voice, and it wasn't hers. It all came to a head during the show's 6th season, when rumors began swirling that Irene had threatened to walk off set if her scenes continued to be reshaped without her input. The network panicked. Granny was too beloved to lose. Viewers tuned in just to see her antics. And yet, behind the scenes, the producers offered only minor concessions, most of which were later undermined. One final insult reportedly occurred when Irene found out through gossip, not through the producers, that a spin-off idea was being floated starring Buddy Ebsen. Granny wasn't mentioned. When she asked about it, she was told it was just an early concept. She didn't believe a word of it. From that point on, the tension between her and Buddy wasn't just palpable, it was radioactive. And the saddest part? Fans had no idea. They saw an on-screen bond that seemed unbreakable, but behind the scenes, it was already shattered. Cast members often stayed neutral, at least publicly. Donna Douglas, who played the sweet and innocent Ellie Mae, would later hint that there were times when the mood on set changed fast, without naming names. Max Baer Jr., who played Jethro, once said in a rare interview that not everyone was friends off set. When pressed, he refused to go further, but whispers continued. A former crew member told a reporter years later that Irene and Buddy had what she called icy professionalism. They worked together only when the cameras rolled. The moment cut was called, Irene would often walk in the opposite direction. Their feud didn't end at the studio door either. One of the most shocking pieces of this puzzle? The pay gap. Despite her massive popularity, Irene Ryan was reportedly paid significantly less than Buddy Ebsen. And while he was granted creative input, behind the scenes she was left in the dark. She was frustrated, she was hurt, but most of all, she was angry. A longtime friend of Ryan's later revealed that Irene once told her, "I gave that role everything. Every growl, every scream, every slap of that spoon, and he got the credit." Another letter discovered after her passing included this gut punch of a line. "They'll always call it his show. I was just the funny old woman who propped it up." To Irene, the pay disparity wasn't just about money. It was about recognition. Legacy, power. She wanted her contributions honored. Instead, she felt pushed aside. As the series ended and reunion shows and nostalgia tours began popping up, fans noticed something strange. Irene Ryan never seemed to appear with the rest of the cast. She gave a few solo interviews, made a couple of comments here and there, but refused to share the spotlight again with Ebsen. Producers would extend invitations. She'd decline. Joint photo shoots were suggested. She was busy. When pressed, her team would vaguely mention health reasons, though she remained active in theater and TV appearances during that time. One source claimed Irene said in private, "I won't sit beside that man and pretend we were ever family." In the last years of her life, Irene Ryan was battling illness but remained mentally sharp. According to those closest to her, she was still haunted by her time on the Beverly Hillbillies, not because of the show itself, but because of how it ended. She felt discarded, forgotten, and worst of all, misrepresented. Personal letters discovered after her passing included raw, heartbreaking admissions. In one, she wrote, "They let him rewrite my scenes. They cut my lines, but they couldn't cut the audience's laughter." Another letter, dated just a few months before her death, read, "He'll be remembered as the sweet old man. Let them remember him that way. I know better." Buddy Ebsen lived many years beyond Irene. He gave interviews, wrote a memoir, appeared at nostalgia conventions, but in all that time, he rarely, if ever, spoke about Irene Ryan. When asked about his co-stars, he praised Donna Douglas. He shared stories about Max Baer Jr. But when Granny came up, silence. Fans noticed. Biographers noticed. One journalist even wrote, Ebsen spoke fondly of almost everyone, except the one who stole every scene from him. Was it guilt? Was it pettiness? Or was it the quiet closing of a chapter he never wanted to revisit? What we saw on the Beverly Hillbillies was laughter, hilarity, a family we felt we knew. But what we didn't see, what we were never meant to see, was the pain, the rivalry, the quiet war between two people who, while pretending to be kin, were emotionally worlds apart. Irene Ryan wasn't just Granny. She was an actress fighting to be heard. And Buddy Ebsen wasn't just Jed Clampett. He was a man used to being at the top. Somewhere between those roles, something broke. Hollywood never told this story, but the truth doesn't stay buried forever. She may have played a character who dished out tough love, but Irene's hate for Buddy Ebsen was no act. It was real, it was deep, and it lasted a lifetime. Because sometimes the greatest performances come from the deepest wounds, and now we finally know why.